I stared at the elegant restaurant entrance, feeling a flutter of hope. After 5 years of estrangement, my brother had invited me to our mother's 60th birthday dinner. Maybe tonight was finally our chance to heal old wounds. I smoothed my new suit purchased just for this occasion and walked in with a genuine smile. I had no idea that within minutes those hopes would shatter completely. If you want to hear how I turned the tables on my toxic family, drop a comment below and hit subscribe for more stories of sweet revenge. My name is Madison, and growing up in Seattle as part of the Williams family meant navigating a world of wealth status and emotional coldness. Our family owned one of the largest real estate development companies in the Pacific Northwest, a legacy my father built from nothing and expected his sons to continue. The problem was I never fit the mold my parents had crafted. While my older brother Jake excelled in business courses and spent weekends shadowing our father at construction sites, I gravitated toward computers and digital art. My mother would look at my coding projects with a blank stare before asking when I would grow out of my phase and join the family business. Jake never missed an opportunity to call my interests a waste of time. Our father was a domineering figure who measured success in square footage and profit margins. When I announced my intention to study computer science instead of business administration during my senior year of high school, he threatened to cut me off financially. My mother, as always, stood silently by his side, her disapproval evident in her tight smile. The breaking point came during a heated family dinner when I was 18. Jake had just been promoted to vice president in the company despite having barely graduated college. When I shared news about a small app I had developed that was gaining traction, Jake laughed and called it my little hobby. I can still hear his words. "You will never amount to anything with this computer nonsense, Madison. Real men build things you can touch, not waste time playing with pixels." That night I packed a single suitcase and left with $200 to my name. I couch surfed with friends, took odd jobs, and eventually landed a position at a startup. The next 3 years were radio silence from my family except for occasional cryptic texts from my mother on holidays. When my father died suddenly of a heart attack 3 years ago, I attended the funeral, but stood at the back of the church. Jake gave the eulogy talking about carrying on the Williams legacy. My mother barely acknowledged me. The reading of the will confirmed what I already knew: the business and majority of assets went to Jake, with my mother receiving a generous trust. I was left a token sum that I immediately donated to a coding program for underprivileged youth. Since then, my attempts at reconciliation had been met with indifference or hostility. Last Thanksgiving, I tried visiting home with a peace offering, a bottle of my mother's favorite wine. Jake spent the entire meal belittling my career choices, while my mother kept refilling her glass, saying nothing in my defense. I left before dessert, vowing never to return. Then something changed. My latest project, a security app that helps small businesses protect against data breaches, caught the attention of major tech publications. Suddenly, I was featured in Forbes and interviewed on national television. The startup I had helped build was acquired for 8 figures, with me retaining a significant stake as Chief Innovation Officer. That's when Jake called. His voice was syrupy sweet as he congratulated me on my success and mentioned Mother's upcoming 60th birthday celebration at Le Ciel, the most exclusive French restaurant in Seattle. "We want you there, little brother. It's time to put the past behind us." I hesitated, knowing their track record. My therapist, Dr. Klein, had spent months helping me establish healthy boundaries with my family. When I mentioned the invitation during our session, she adjusted her glasses thoughtfully. "Ask yourself what you're hoping to gain from this encounter, Madison, and prepare for the possibility that they haven't changed," she advised. "But sometimes people do surprise us. Just remember you can leave at any time." My closest friend Amanda was more direct when I called her that evening. "Those people have never appreciated you," she said firmly. "But I understand wanting to give them one last chance. Just promise you'll walk away if they pull their usual garbage." Despite the warnings, hope bloomed. Maybe my success had finally earned their respect. Maybe we could heal the rift. I spent hours selecting the perfect gift for my mother, a rare first edition of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, her favorite novel that cost nearly $5,000. I even bought a new tailored suit for the occasion, something that would impress even my label's conscious family. The night of the dinner, I arrived at Le Ciel 15 minutes early, clutching the elegantly wrapped gift. The maitre d' recognized my name on the reservation and led me toward a private dining room in the back. Through the glass doors, I could see my extended family already gathered around a long table gleaming with crystal and silver. The conversation halted abruptly as I entered. My cousin Tyler looked up with genuine surprise while my aunts exchanged glances. Uncle Robert cleared his throat awkwardly. My mother, elegant in a blue dress that matched her eyes, mine as well, sat at the head of the table, not bothering to stand. "Madison," she said, her voice carrying the same detached tone she had used throughout my childhood. "You made it." I approached her with the wrapped book. "Happy birthday, Mom. I thought you might like this." She took it with a polite nod and set it aside unopened, unlike the display of unwrapped gifts already arranged on a side table. No one offered to take my coat. Jake rose from his seat at Mother's right hand, looking every inch the successful heir in his designer suit. His handshake was firm, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Little brother," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "we were beginning to think you would bail like usual." I forced a smile, refusing to take the bait. "Wouldn't miss it, Jake." He clasped my shoulder with unnecessary force, guiding me further into the room. I noticed several relatives averting their eyes, suddenly very interested in their water glasses. Jake's wife, Stephanie, smirked from her seat, whispering something to my cousin Emma that made her snicker behind her hand. That's when the evening took its first obvious turn. I stood awkwardly at the edge of the table, waiting for someone to indicate where I should sit. The elegant place settings stretched the length of the table, each space marked with a delicate name card in calligraphy. I scanned for my name but saw nothing. The silence grew uncomfortable as relatives pretended to be absorbed in conversations while stealing glances my way. Jake cleared his throat, theatrically drawing all attention. "Oh, Madison," he said with exaggerated concern. "I just realized we have a bit of a seating issue." The smile on his face told me there was no issue at all, this was planned. "Sorry, this table's for family only." He continued, his voice dripping with fake regret, as he pointed toward a small folding chair positioned near the kitchen entrance, right beside a decorative trash can. Everyone at the actual family table would be able to see me sitting alone. The dining room erupted in poorly concealed laughter. My cousin Tyler at least had the decency to look embarrassed, but my mother simply sipped, her champagne eyes fixed on the centerpiece. "We just didn't think you'd actually show," Stephanie added with mock innocence. "But the staff was kind enough to find a spot for you." My face burned with humiliation as I stood frozen. Walking out would give them exactly what they wanted, confirmation that I couldn't handle their world. Staying meant enduring their cruelty, but perhaps finding a way to maintain my dignity. The waiter approaching with a pitcher of water looked profoundly uncomfortable, his professional demeanor cracking slightly as he registered the situation. "Should I set another place at the main table?" he asked quietly. Jake waved his hand dismissively. "That won't be necessary. My brother is fine where he is." "Right, Madison." Every eye in the room turned to me. In that moment, I made my choice. I walked calmly to the isolated chair, sat down and nodded to the waiter. "Water would be great, thank you," I said, with as much dignity as I could muster. The meal proceeded like a bizarre theater production. From my position near the kitchen door, I watched as my family enjoyed course after course of exquisite French cuisine. Waiters served me the same dishes, though they seemed apologetic as they delivered each plate to my solitary table. I tried to focus on the food. The butter-poached lobster was genuinely extraordinary, but found it difficult to swallow past the lump in my throat. Occasionally, relatives would glance my way with expressions ranging from amusement to discomfort, but no one approached or spoke to me directly. From my isolated position, I could overhear snippets of conversation, including Jake regaling the table with stories of my supposed failures. "Remember when he thought he could be a graphic designer? He laughed loud enough to ensure I would hear. Dad had to bail him out of that apartment in the university district. Place was crawling with roaches. This was a complete fabrication. I had never asked for or received financial help after leaving home, but the table nodded along, accepting Jake's version of reality. My mother occasionally glanced my way, her expression unreadable. Once when we made eye contact, I thought I detected a flicker of something regret, but she quickly looked away. As the main course was cleared, I overheard a conversation that suddenly clarified everything. Jake was speaking in lowered tones to our Uncle Robert, unaware that his voice carried to my corner. "The Westlake development is just temporarily stalled," Jake insisted. "Once we secure additional capital, the project will be back on track. The investors are just being cautious after the lumber price spike." Uncle Robert looked skeptical. "Your father would have had contingency plans." I noticed Jake's knuckles whitening around his wine glass. "Temporary setbacks happen in any business. We will recover." My cousin Tyler's 6-year-old son Christopher wandered over to my table during dessert, looking confused. "Uncle Madison, why are you sitting with the garbage?" he asked loudly enough for everyone to hear. Jake let out a bark of laughter. Out of the mouths of babes, he announced to the table, "The child understands family hierarchy better than some adults." My nephew was quickly retrieved by his embarrassed father, but the damage was done. Several relatives joined in the laughter while others studied their dessert plates intently. It was during the coffee service that Jake finally revealed his true motive for inviting me. He stood glass in hand, commanding the attention of the room. "A toast to family," he declared. "To those who remain loyal through good times and bad. To those who understand what it means to be a Williams." His eyes fixed pointedly on me as he continued. "And to those who only appear when they think they have something to gain," he added with a smirk. "Welcome back, brother. Now that you've had a small taste of success, you've decided family matters again." In that moment, any lingering hope I had for reconciliation evaporated. This invitation had never been about healing our relationship. It was about putting me in my place, about demonstrating Jake's continued dominance despite my recent success. I noticed my mother still hadn't opened my gift, though Shed made quite a show of admiring the diamond bracelet Jake had presented her earlier. The realization settled cold and final in my chest. This family would never change, would never see me as worthy of genuine inclusion. As the evening progressed, I observed with growing interest the subtle signs of tension in Jake's demeanor. Beneath his confident exterior, he kept checking his watch and scanning the room nervously. When he thought no one was looking, I caught him in whispered arguments with Stephanie, their smiles dropping the moment they thought they were unobserved. During a lull in the conversation, I overheard fragments of a hushed exchange between Jake and my mother. "The Westlake project just needs a cash infusion," he insisted. "The banks are being unreasonable about the extension." My mother's voice was tight. "Your father would never have overextended like this." "We just need to weather this temporary downturn," Jake replied. "Everything will stabilize." The pieces were falling into place. The family business was in trouble. And Jake, despite his outward displays of wealth and success, was desperate. His sudden interest in reconnecting with me made perfect sense. Now he had seen my tech success featured in the financial press and thought I might be an easy source of capital. My suspicions were confirmed when one of the waiters approached me during the birthday cake presentation. He leaned down as if adjusting my water glass. "Your brother informed the management that you would be handling the bill this evening, sir," he murmured discreetly. "He mentioned something about it being your gift to your mother." I kept my expression neutral as I processed this information. Jake hadn't even put down a credit card as security for the reservation. He had planned this entire humiliating evening and expected me to pay for the privilege. I thanked the waiter for the information and settled back to observe. Jake had been flaunting his supposed wealth all evening, champagne flowing freely, encouraging everyone to order the most expensive items on the menu, insisting on rare vintage wines, all while planning to stick me with the bill at the end of the night. As coffee and digestives were served, Jake finally made his move, leaving his seat to approach my isolated table. He pulled up a chair, sitting close enough that our conversation wouldn't be overheard by the rest of the family. "You've done well for yourself, little brother," he began, his tone almost congratulatory. "That app of yours really took off." I smiled politely. "The company is doing well." Jake leaned in, lowering his voice. "Listen, Madison. I know we've had our differences, but we're still family. I've been thinking we should explore ways to collaborate." "Collaborate?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Your tech expertise, our real estate portfolio, he continued, warming to his pitch. There are some really exciting possibilities for Smart Building's integrated systems. The Williams name behind a tech-forward real estate venture could be huge. I noticed how carefully he avoided mentioning the financial troubles I'd overheard. This wasn't a collaboration he was proposing. It was a bailout disguised as a business opportunity. Interesting, I said noncommittally. What kind of investment would you be looking for? A flash of relief crossed his face at my apparent interest. Well, need to discuss details, of course, but initially perhaps 5 to 7 million. Just to get things rolling. The number was staggering considering he'd just spent the evening treating me like unwanted garbage. Before I could respond, the maitre d' appeared at the main table carrying a leather folio that I knew contained the bill. The room quieted as he placed it discreetly next to my mother, who immediately pointed toward Jake. He hesitated for a split second before rising from our table to accept it, his confident smile faltering slightly as he opened the folder. I watched as the color drained from his face. The evening had been extravagant vintage champagne specialty courses, rare wines. For 15 people, including gratuity, the total would be substantial. Jake glanced in my direction, his expression shifting from shock to expectation. This had been his plan all along. Invite me, humiliate me, then use my new financial success to foot the bill before pitching me on saving his failing business. The waiter stood patiently as Jake fumbled with his inside pocket, pretending to search for something. Everything in order, sir? The waiter asked. Jake cleared his throat. Just one moment. Actually, I believe my brother wanted to handle this tonight. As a gesture, every eye in the room turned toward me. Some relatives looked embarrassed, finally understanding the evening's true purpose. Others appeared curious about how I would respond. My mother watched with that same unreadable expression. I stood from my isolated table and walked calmly to where the waiter stood with the bill. Jake handed me the leather folio with a triumphant smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. $3,200. An extravagant sum for an evening of humiliation. The waiter looked at me expectantly. Will you be handling this, sir? I felt the weight of the moment, years of rejection and dismissal condensed into this single decision. I looked around at the family that had never accepted me, that had planned this elaborate charade to use me while reminding me I didn't belong. With perfect clarity, I handed the bill back to the waiter and smiled. Not my table, I said simply. The silence that followed was absolute. Jake's smug expression crumbled into disbelief, then rapidly shifted to panic. What are you talking about? He hissed. Of course it's your table. I spoke clearly, ensuring everyone could hear. I believe you told me quite specifically that this table was for family only. I turned to the waiter. I was seated separately, as you saw at my brother's insistence. The waiter, to his credit, maintained his professional composure, though I detected a hint of admiration in his eyes. I understand, sir, he said, turning back to Jake. How will you be settling the account, Mr. Williams? Jake's face flushed dark red as he frantically patted his pockets. There must be some mistake. I seem to have left my wallet in my other jacket. The excuse sounded hollow even to my ears. Several relatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Perhaps Mrs. Williams would like to handle the bill, the waiter suggested, glancing toward my mother. She looked startled, as if the thought of paying for her own birthday dinner was entirely foreign. I knew that since my father's death, she had become accustomed to Jake managing all financial matters. Jake turned to me again, desperation replacing his earlier confidence. Madison, be reasonable. This is your mother's birthday. Yes, it is, I agreed calmly. And it was your choice to seat me by the trash. I began walking toward the exit, feeling lighter with each step. Behind me, I heard the rising panic in Jake's voice as he attempted to salvage the situation. Surely someone has a card. Stephanie, did you bring yours? But I didn't look back. For the first time in years, I felt completely free of the need for their approval or acceptance. Their opinion of me no longer mattered. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake full of expletives and threats, which I deleted without responding. I drove home in a strange mix of emotions, satisfaction at having stood my ground, grief, for the family relationship I would never have, and something else, a sense of release. By the time I reached my apartment, I had 3 more texts and 2 missed calls from Jake, plus a surprisingly civil message from my cousin Tyler expressing understanding for my actions. I silenced my phone and poured myself a whiskey, raising a toast to my own reflection. To not my table, I said aloud, and slept better that night than I had in years. The next morning brought a barrage of communications. Jake had apparently been forced to call in a favor from a business associate to cover the bill, causing significant embarrassment. My mother left a voicemail expressing profound disappointment in my childish behavior. Several relatives took sides, some berating me for disrespecting the family, others quietly acknowledging that I had been treated poorly. I listened to each message once, then deleted them all. After careful consideration, I blocked Jake's and my mother's numbers. The decision wasn't made in anger, but in recognition of a fundamental truth: they would never be the family I needed. In the following weeks, I channeled my energy into positive directions. Sessions with Dr. Klein helped me process the experience and recognize it as a pivotal moment in my healing journey. Your action wasn't about revenge, she pointed out. It was about finally enforcing a boundary they had repeatedly violated. I began volunteering at a community center, teaching coding to teenagers who, like me, didn't quite fit conventional expectations. Many came from challenging family situations, and I found unexpected fulfillment in providing the encouragement and validation I had never received. My success in the tech world continued to grow, and I used my platform to advocate for mental health awareness and support systems for young people estranged from their families. I eventually developed an app connecting isolated individuals with community resources and chosen family support networks. 6 months after the restaurant incident, news reached me through industry channels that Williams Development was filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Jake had apparently overleveraged the company on several speculative projects that failed spectacularly. The family name that had been wielded like a weapon against me for so many years no longer carried the weight it once did. I felt no satisfaction in their downfall, only a quiet acknowledgement that the facade had finally crumbled. Success built on manipulation and cruelty is always more fragile than it appears. A year after that fateful dinner, I received an unexpected letter from my youngest cousin Lily, who had just turned 18. Unlike the rest of the family, she wrote with sincerity and humility. I was too young to understand what happened that night, she wrote, but I've always admired how you built your own path. The family business is gone and everyone is blaming everyone else. I want something different for my life. Would you be willing to talk sometime? That letter led to coffee, which led to mentorship. Lily became the first relative with whom I established a healthy relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation. She eventually joined my company as an intern, earning her position through hard work rather than family connection. 2 years after the restaurant incident, I ran into my mother at a charity gala. I had become a significant donor to several educational foundations, and my presence was requested at various high-profile events. She looked older, the confident bearing diminished since the family's financial collapse. She couldn't quite meet my eyes as we exchanged bland pleasantries. When I mentioned Lily's success in her internship, something like regret flickered across her face. She always was a smart girl, my mother said softly. You seem well, Madison. I am, I answered truthfully. We didn't speak of Jake or the past, and I felt no need to. The encounter left me reflective but unburdened. The anger that had once consumed me had dissolved, replaced by understanding that some people remain trapped in patterns they cannot break. The following Thanksgiving, I hosted dinner at my home for what I now considered my true family friends who had supported me through difficult times, colleagues who shared my values, Lily and her girlfriend, and several students from my coding program who had nowhere else to go. As we gathered around my table, a real one where everyone was welcomed equally, I realized the profound truth I had learned through my journey. Family isn't determined by blood or last names. It's created through respect, acceptance, and mutual support. The greatest revenge against those who try to diminish you isn't grand gestures or public humiliation. It's living well, setting boundaries, and finding peace without their approval. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic family relationships? What boundaries have you set to protect your well-being? Share your experiences in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in difficult situations. Remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is simply, "Not my table." Thank you for listening, and may you always find your place at tables filled with genuine love and respect.